That's where Facebook Live is going to capture, right? Like this. It's going to be like, oh, Adam looks like he's casting a spell. Ergo, this is the place I'm going to freeze. Maybe if I didn't talk with my hands up, Facebook Live wouldn't capture the still image there. What up, Nico, and anyone else? I got my Star Trek comm badge here today, so I am fully set. And Nico asked this awesome question. It's so good, and I had some hesitancy about responding because I have fears about being too much, and I was like, "Ooh, I already did a Facebook Live in this group already," and anyhow. It's just so rich, and I don't care about those fears that yap in my ear. Screw them. Screw you, fears. Get out of here. I'm going to drink some coffee instead. So here is the situation Nico was asking for some feedback around, which is basically as a client, and I hope I get this right, a client who is both doing one-on-one work with them as well as in a group and is showing up pretty belligerent. She's not doing exercises that Nico is giving because she feels that they don't apply to her or she doesn't need them. All she needs is answers and practical steps. Maybe I made a mistake in joining. She's fighting, she's arguing, and she feels uncoachable. And Nico's asking, well, what do I do from there? How do I be with this? How do I handle this? So to me, this is one of the most profound places to support someone as a coach. And it's so profound because this is the place where no one else will support them. If you think about it, if you imagine just how this person shows up in their life and take the way they're showing up inside this coaching relationship and then just extrapolate that out to everywhere else in their life, because the way we are being in one place is the way we're being in every place. If you just imagine that for a moment, that's a lonely life. And that is a life where everyone just decides, screw this, I'm not going to waste my time here. What's the point? You want me to tell you what to do? Do this. And this person never really moves forward. They kind of just pinball around. And the temptation as coaches is to, when someone's showing up this way, to just be like, you know what? I didn't sign up for this. Laters, I'm out. I don't need you. And we don't. As a coach, we don't need really any of our clients. But I would invite you to honor your commitment to your client the same way you expect and request your client to honor their commitment to you. A lot of coaches don't do this. They're like, oh, the client's showing up this way and they're being crappy. You know what? I'm going to fire them. Well, that's not really honoring the commitment you've made. The commitment I make with my clients is when we say yes to each other, we're in this. I will stand with you all the way through to the end. So there's a few things that I'll talk about, and Nico, I'm going to go through some of your stuff. I've got it all. It's a lot, but I've got some parts bolded that I want to speak about. But first, let's just have a sip of this. I've got espresso today to go with my comm badge. Good coffee. Just let them know in engineering that the replicators are working very well. So let's see. Where do we want to start? I'm just going to read a few parts around this to provide a bit of context. So some of what Nico says, last week during our private session, I felt already that something was off. First, she said she didn't do the exercises because she doesn't need them. She's not like the others in the group. She already has all the experience, and so she needs only answers and practical steps. She kept saying, maybe I made a mistake joining. I only need somebody who tells me exactly what to write on my website and how to get more clients. Okay. And then Nico says, well, I reminded her of our agreements and of the fact that I wouldn't be of much help to her if I would hand out advice and answers. And I also asked her if this looking for somebody else to give her answers is something she experiences also in other parts of her life. So great. Hey, Carol. Great. That's just a great question. You know, Nico, you're inviting her to take a look outside of her life. The only trouble is that in this moment, she isn't very coachable. And so until you address that, the world's greatest coaching question that will open anyone up, it's going to be defeated by the armor that your client's wearing in this moment. She said no, of course, right? It's kind of like when we want to enroll someone or we're seeking to, and the person's like, go on, try and enroll me. And they're scared. They're kind of resistant to, they don't want to get to a yes because they're scared of what that will mean. So they're like, well, okay, try and enroll me. It's like, I can't. enrollment happens over there with you. I can support you in getting enrolled, but I can't force you to be enrolled in your own life. Nico says, she felt uncoachable. I felt powerless, so I gave in and gave her some consultancy rather than coaching. I'm just going to hit the mic with my hand there. Nico says, I know. I shouldn't have consulted. This way we managed to get to the end of our session. Okay, so here's the challenge there. Like, in that moment, Nico, what I would have done is I would have pointed to what you were speaking to. I would have said, hey, it feels actually like you're not interested in coaching at all in this moment. You don't feel like you're interested in taking a look. It doesn't feel like you're really open. And then I would have also, had that been okay, right? Remember, our job is just to be a shiny mirror without any judgment or attachment to how our client shows up. So like, let's call this woman Leanne, I'll just make up a name. So Leanne, it feels like in this moment, like I hear you saying this, and it seems like you're not actually interested in coaching. You just want me to give you a set of steps you can follow. Is that right? And if she says yes, well then, there's a couple places you might go with her. One might be like, well, I just want to be clear, like, and I have been clear, that's not what I can provide you. Or you might choose to say, okay, well, I'm happy to do that. And I would love to invite you into taking a look at what might be possible outside of that, or even look and see if that's really what's going to serve you. But if you're not open to any of that and you're just like, give me the answers, or no, fine, I'll give you the answers. I just don't think I'm really standing for your possibility or your breakthroughs or anything. So notice I'm not making her, I don't need her to accept it. I don't need her to be a certain way. I'm simply giving it to her and kind of holding the space for her to show up however she does. That's kind of what I would have done in this moment, that first point. And then you say sort of, today she came onto the group call. I could already sense she was nervous and disconnected. Okay. Instead of gently looking into it and bringing it up, what I was feeling, I ignored it, fearing that it might destabilize the whole group session. So this is, I want to acknowledge that I think a lot of coaches early on feel like coaching a group is going to be an easier way to get into higher ticket, or like an easier way to build their practice. Because with a group, it's in theory kind of a lower level of commitment. It's like holding a workshop or something where, oh, well, I'll just have a group. People don't have to pay as much, but I can still earn the same amount of money. Okay, cool. And I'm not suggesting, Nico, that this is what you're doing, but I'm going to go with that for a sec, because what I notice is that actually coaching a group is much more challenging than coaching an individual for exactly the reason you just pointed to. I'm afraid that it's going to destabilize the whole group. And you're not just coaching one survival mechanism, which is how we show up when we get afraid. You are coaching 5 or 6 or 10 survival mechanisms. So you've got to handle that much more energy and be able to bounce people off of each other. It's a much more nuanced way to work with people, and it requires a great deal of practice and skill. And most of us are afraid to destabilize the group session. Well, here's the truth. Your job is to destabilize the group session. This woman's actually bringing a gift, and what's there, like the thing that's in the way is the way. And so with love, Nico, this is you avoiding actually addressing what is there to be addressed. I think it's really valuable to consider like what might be available in this moment to all of these other people if we were to really take a look at this, if we were really to take this on. Some people are probably also pissed off at Leanne for the way she's showing up, and they might get an opportunity to see some of their own humanity or some of her humanity. And other people are going to get to see, wow, they're going to see some of themselves as you work with Leanne. And so what most of us do is we avoid poking the sleeping bear because we don't want to create a mess, because we're afraid that we won't be able to clean up the mess. And leadership happens from the mess. Leading happens outside of the mess. And I assert if you're doing group coaching, your job is to lead. Let's take a sip here. I like this mug because it fits under the espresso machine. This is the only, I use this mug for coffee, not for, are you guys here for coffee tips as well? This is some coffee tips. Coffee chat with Adam. Okay, so your job is to make a mess. And, everything I'm saying here, I really want you to be forgiving with yourself and bring yourself a lot of love, because I want to acknowledge you for being in this conversation, for seeking support, for, that's exactly, Carol, for seeking support, for really, like, I really get, Nico, that you care and you want to make a difference for this woman. So that's beautiful. Yeah, Tanner, you got it. It's coffee on a Thursday afternoon. So you're doing great. It's great that you're asking for this. Please don't take this feedback I'm providing and use it to make yourself a piece of crap. Don't do that. That's not the intention here. So your job is to create the mess, to destabilize the session. That is from whence the work can really happen. And then you say, she wasn't there mentally. When asked to jump in with her thoughts, she would say, I wasn't quite listening because that topic was not relevant to me. I tried to address this, inviting all the group to listen without judgment, listening for insights rather than for agreement, etc. And then towards the end, and then there was like a blow up. She started shaming a participant. At that point, you stopped her. You kind of called her out, explained that it's important for the group to remain in a safe space for sharing without judgment. At which point she exploded, saying that the fact that you stopped her, prevented her from sharing her opinion, was unprofessional and a deal breaker. She then left the Zoom call. Damn, that has a big slimy mess, right? First, I would like to share a story with you about a mess I created one time, mostly because I want to connect with you and I really want you to get that I know this. So I was leading coach training, and there was we were clearing the team, myself and the other person that I was leading with. We were clearing our team of people that were training our coaches. So we had about 8 people. And in the morning, one of them showed up, and she was going through some stuff in her life, which I really understood. And yet she showed up kind of unwilling to participate. We were like, hey, what's going on? What's showing up for you? And she's like, I really don't want, I want you to just leave me alone right now. I'm going through a lot. I want to be left alone, which is totally understandable. That's a really understandable way to be human. Except if our commitment and our job is to show up and be a leader, we don't get that choice. If I'm committed to being a leader, my job is to show up and do my work so I can be clean and clear, so I can lead and support these other people. And she knew, like, this wasn't a surprise to her. She'd committed to this at the start of the year. And so I said, okay, well, look, that's not going to work in this room. You made a commitment to be here. You're here for the participants that we're training. You said that you were in for this, and I really completely get it. And I'm actually going to stand for the commitment you made and for you to do your work. And she paused and she looked at me and she said, well, you can go fuck yourself, Adam. And she stood up and she walked out of the room. And everyone, including myself, went, huh. And so I so get it. Those are one of those moments when you're like, oh my God, I suck. I'm a horrible human being. What am I going to do? Yeah, Tanner, exactly. It's powerful in a lot of ways. And so the way that resolved is I sent my partner, I asked my partner who was co-leading with me, hey, will you go out and talk to her? I'm not the person. She can't hear me in this moment. And then I stayed and completed clearing our team and getting us ready. So that's another example. Like, actually, we couldn't move forward until that had happened, right? Like, with her sitting in the space, unwilling to do her work, everyone's energy is drawn towards her, and it just doesn't work. We can't move forward unless we work there, unless we are willing to address the thing in the way. State of angst to deep breathing. That's awesome, Annie. Let's drink some coffee to that. Hell yeah. Okay. So yes, you want to create that mess. Now, the way that it transpired, just reading what you said here, at best, I get what you've written after the fact, but it sounds like you kind of let it go a few steps, right? And then you're pointing to it. Here would have been the great place to point to it, like right as she started, or even beforehand. You're pointing to it after it's gone a far way. The longer we wait, the longer, the greater the sort of reaction. The longer we let something bubble up before addressing it, the more there is to deal with once we finally do address it. I also want to caution you about having a judgment-free space if your intention is to coach people. Because the truth is we all have judgments. I had judgments about that person I just told you about who told me to go fuck myself. And it's not that I pretend not to have judgments. It's that I will acknowledge those and not make them mean anything. And so my intention in all of this, Nico, is to sew in that there's work for you to do as a leader, not because you suck, but I don't want the danger when someone shows up this way is that we as coaches and leaders go, well, it's not my fault. That person was sucking. And then it lets us off our work. So for you, Nico, in this situation, really one, be courageous. And I'm not saying don't have fear because this is scary stuff, which is how you know you're leading. Be courageous and poke that sleeping bear early on. Don't wait for it, like get in there. And two, actually, I invite you to hold the space for people to have judgments and for you to be able to hold the container and support them. Because in people's judgments, they will get to see what's going on. You're actually preventing this woman from really doing her work by, like, she is rife with judgments. And all you're really doing is just like, well, just don't have those. And then she's like, okay, what do I do now? I hate all these people. You need those judgments out so you can do the work. So a bit of a side note, but an important one. Okay, a few more things. On the other hand, I wonder if it's fair to blame myself. To what extent is it my role to make somebody coachable? Very nuanced. So one, it is not fair to blame yourself. You should not be blaming yourself for this. Stop that. You are wrong if you blame yourself. Do not blame yourself. However, it is 100% your job to take responsibility for how this has gone. So responsibility is ownership without blame. That's an accomplishment coaching distinction, and I think it is so valuable. Ownership of what's happened without blame. So it's not your fault. It's not bad that this happened. It's not that this shouldn't have happened, but can you take ownership of it? Because in taking ownership, you can come back to leadership. As long as this is not you, it's on her, it's fine, but then what role do you have in doing anything about this? The only real option is, well, I'll just remove her from the group, which will solve things to some extent, but you're going to step over a massive breakthrough that's available for you, for her, and for the other people in the group. That's the cost of doing that. It's not your role to make someone coachable. It is your role to help them see when they are being uncoachable. That's a big difference, right? My mirror's job is not to tell me, Adam, are you kidding me? Star Trek pin with that blazer? You look like a dork. My mirror's job is just to go, here's how that looks. Here's what you're currently wearing. And so your job as coach is to buy a Star Trek pin because it's awesome and to reflect to this person, hey, it occurs like you're actually uncoachable in this moment. Is that the case? Is that how you want to be? I'm not going to try and force you. It's okay to me if you spend the next 6 weeks with your arms crossed uncoachable. You're going to get a lot less value out of this than you might otherwise. Like, there's going to be a consequence to that. It's going to gum stuff up. We're going to have to address it. But look, that's okay. I can work with that. And you have my permission to do that. That's really important. Uncoachable is a super dangerous term because what most of us do when we deem someone uncoachable is we relinquish responsibility. We relinquish all of the ownership. And it's just like, oh, if only you didn't suck, we could coach and it'd be all great. So what I would invite you to do is to relate to someone being uncoachable as actually being a breakdown in your relationship with them. The reason this person is uncoachable is because there is some kind of breakdown in the relationship. I don't know if that's true, but in my experience, 99.9999%, there's actually one more 9 in there, so it's 99.99999% of people that are uncoachable. There's work for me to do as coach and to shift how I'm relating to them and then to recreate the relationship. And from that place, magic happens. If there is a breakdown in the relationship, then that means you have some work to do. It means you need to go and take a look and see, hey, how am I relating to this woman? And I really invite you to check in. What are your stories about her? What are your judgments of her? How are you holding her? And what do you need to do? Maybe you need to bring this to your coach and check it out with them. Like, hey, I'm holding this person as like kind of a judgmental donkey. And that doesn't seem to be serving me as a coach. So how can I get back to really holding them as their light and being present to who they are and the gifts that they're bringing? How can I hold this person as whole and complete rather than some broken, stupid, uncoachable person? That's our work as coach, to get back to that place so then we can stand and be in relationship with these people. Let's just have a sip of coffee. Seems like a good call. And just check in here. That was a good call. That was an excellent call on my part. Perhaps Uncoachable is not about the client, or if it is, that could still be awesome. Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying, Annie, is like, so Uncoachable is really about the relationship. That's my invitation. And if we relate to that being the problem, then it creates an entirely different space to come from and to play in. So breakdown in the relationship. Here's how I would deal with that. I would reach out to Annie, especially at this point, but sooner, ideally. And I would say, hey, it occurs to me like I'm getting some mess on you. Actually, I would say it this way. One, it occurs to me like I made a mess and I want to clean that up. And two, it occurs like there's a breakdown in our relationship. And I want to bring us back to relationship so that I can support you. I can do what we got into this relationship to do. And I'm committed to doing that because that's the commitment we made to each other. Would you be open to a call about that? And remember, if she says no, there's not much you can do. More on that later. And in that relationship, this is after I've done all my own work. You don't go and have this conversation until you're complete and you're able to relate to her as her greatness, as her light. Incidentally, my guess would be that this woman has a great deal of brilliance amongst other parts. And yeah, Ty, this video it'll show up somewhere in the Prosperous Coach, and I'll put it on my YouTube channel too, and I'll share that in the comments as well. Brilliance, people with a lot of brilliance, the trouble with us is that we are often right, which creates huge blind spots when we're wrong. And it also makes it hard for us to listen to other people because other people are dumb. I'm not saying this is true. I'm just saying there's a common experience that then leads to this, blah, blah, blah. And so this woman's probably really brilliant and doesn't like to slow down and doesn't like to operate from beginner's mind because then she feels kind of stupid. So anyhow, all of this is sort of stuff you clear out, you get supported with by your own coach. I would get into that conversation with her. And at that point, I would invite her to share anything she's got to share. What do you have to say to me, first of all? What do you have that you haven't said yet? I want to really fully hear you. I want to completely get what's going on over there. And it might require a little bit of coaxing and invitation, but your job is really to hold the space for that and to really get, this is the challenge here, to really get how everything she's saying is true. It might not be true the way she means it, but to really in your body, like really to be able to empathize to such an extent that even if she's like, I feel like you're fucking around and you don't even care about this, to really get like, okay, I got it. Like if the only truth you can hold in that moment is that that is how she feels, I got it. I really get that that's how you feel. You feel like I'm fucking around and I'm not doing my job. I really understand that. What else? What else do you have for me? And so what the intention here is that she feels fully heard, like so heard that there's nothing left for her to share at the end of this, that she just gets a chance to really share it all with you and you empathize and understand and get how that can be true and just are able to hold that space with love. I hope that everyone watching this can see how important it is to have our own coach. You can't fake this. If you try to fake this, you will get karate chopped in the neck and die. It just doesn't work. We can't hold that space unless we've gotten clear, and we just can't we can't do that by ourselves. It just doesn't work. So hold that space, have all of it. And then and only then, I would apologize for the experience that she's having. And I would take a look and see what I could really own. Like, wow, I really get, I'll use another example. Someone in our group, actually, just recently, she made a post where she talked about how she has an experience where she reaches out to me for support, and then I become a bear with big claws and she gets bitten. And I read that and I thought, well, fuck me. That sucks. The thing I'm most afraid of in the world is that I become a bear with big claws and hurt people. That's not who I want to be. I love this person. And so I wrote to her and I said, hey, it feels like I've made a mess. Can I clean up? And she shared some of the stuff. She said, you know, Adam, I really feel like you're cold and distant and like you're even more warm. I feel more connected to you in your videos than I do sometimes when we're in conversation. And I went through this and I heard and I understood. And then I told her, like, you know, first of all, one of the things I hate about me is that sometimes I can get really cold and distant. And I do that from safety. And sometimes I do that even unintentionally. And I don't even realize it. And sometimes people just perceive that even when I'm not doing it. Like I'm not always 100% outward facing in my emotions. Sometimes they're back here a little bit. I'm still feeling it, but they're just, you know, not as out. And whichever of those happens to be the case, I really want you to know, like, I get how I could have created that for you. And I'm really sorry. I really want to take ownership that that's how I left you feeling, regardless of whether I intended it or not. And I'm really sorry about that. That's not my commitment to you as your coach. So that's an example of kind of taking ownership for this, right? Not your job to blame yourself, but it is your job to take ownership for this whole thing, 100% ownership. And then, and only then, once I've done all that, I would check in with her. Is there anything else you need me to apologize for? Most coaches will not go this far because they are worried. They're attached to the way the client shows up. So they'll say something like, but Adam, if I take ownership, then she won't have to take ownership. And then she'll never get this. And then blah, 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 blah. That's your attachment. That is irrelevant. How she shows up beyond this is irrelevant. Your job in this moment is to model what it looks like as a leader to be in ownership of how things are going. That's what we do as coaches. So if you're getting caught over how your client is going to show up in response to this, bring that to your coach. Get coached around that. Our job as coaches, ownership. Okay, let's move on from that one. Do we move on from that one? No, here's the last part before we move on from that one. What was it? Oh, yes. Apologize, take ownership. And then lastly, I would say, look, I would like to share with you what I see as possible. Not necessary, but what's possible and how I see that getting missed. Are you interested in that? Are you open to it? You don't have to be. It's totally fine. I'm happy just to have this call and to hear you and let that be the end of it. And usually at this point, if you've really heard someone, yeah, they want to hear that. They want to know. And so they'll say, yeah, sure. And at that point, I would say, listen, Leanne, I think you're brilliant. And I see that brilliance. And I also notice how it's getting in your way. I notice that it has you show up from there's nothing here for me. I already know what I need to know and what I need to learn. And then that creates like these really big blinders for you where you can't actually see anything other than what you've already decided is what you need to see. And it's fine. I don't need you to change. But I also really get that, like, I can see that's costing you something. And I'm not sure if you can see it or not, but I can see it. And it's a little bit heartbreaking. I also noticed that it's costing the group something because there's a real gift in them seeing your brilliance actually kind of releasing its clench on stuff and being a little vulnerable. By them not getting to see you do your work, it kind of gives them the right to reserve not doing their own work. And so they're missing out on a breakthrough because you're missing out on a breakthrough. This isn't blame. It's not a threat or something you have to do. But I just want you to get there's an impact to this. Not bad. Just like every choice, there's a benefit and a consequence to it. My intention is to give you insight into both the benefit and the consequence. So you can choose with your eyes wide open. And I might play with her a little bit back and forth, but ultimately my intention again is to bring her back to choice. Remember, before I can do that, I got to recreate the relationship. And once I've done all that, that's probably the work that there is to do. I would probably also say, look, I want your permission to call this out when I see it with the group. But it's going to require a willingness on your part for me to do that. Because that's when it can have the most benefit is if I point to it in the moment. We can have these calls. I'm willing to do it with you. It's just going to slow down your development. And if you really want to go faster, I'm willing to take the risk and do the scary thing over here to call it out when it happens. If you're willing to like practice like releasing a little bit and relaxing and letting me make that difference for you. Are you up for that? And if she says yes, awesome. And if she says no, great. Then you work with it. Maybe you point to it gently and say, hey, I just want to flag this for you next time, Leanne. We can talk offline, but this is one of those moments we talked about. So that's how I would remedy this. I would rebuild the relationship. I would do my own work. I would get 100% responsible. And then I just don't say, yep, got it. I noticed I was wearing a Star Trek pin and I wanted to be a dork. That was totally for me. That was not for you guys. Just calling that stuff out. Rebuild the relationship, invite her back into possibility. Okay, great. Here's a few more things that I notice and want to speak to in this vein. First, I saw someone say, it sounds like you and her are not a hell yes to each other. Hell yes is dangerous in this context. I'm not saying they're wrong, but I just want to caution against that. And here's why. We should be testing our hell yes up until the point when we both make the commitment. And this is why we should really be testing our clients' commitment as well as our own. The danger is, as coaches, we see dollar signs and then we're like, sweet, I'm in for this person. Are you really? Are you actually willing to commit to stay with this person no matter how they show up all the way through? If not, you aren't a hell yes. So make sure, not just when they're roses and they're excited about the possibility, but are you willing to sit with them through thick and thin? And then are they up to let you let you support them, to let you make a difference, to really go through this hard work, even when they're 100% certain that they're wrong about it or that you're wrong about it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Once you guys have said yes to each other, my invitation is to take off the question of whether or not I'm a hell yes. Take that off the table. You've made the commitment. You already said you were a hell yes to her. Now your responsibility as coach is to be that commitment, not to question it, to be that commitment. Remember, I want to be as strong in my commitment as I want my clients to be strong in their commitment. So this is actually a calling forward for you as a coach. And hell yes can become this funny kind of thing where it's a little bit like declaring someone uncoachable, where it allows us to dust our hands without doing our work. So it may not be wrong. Maybe you said yes too soon. Maybe she said yes too soon. Maybe you didn't test the commitment on either side of the fence soon enough or enough. And maybe that's a lesson for next time. But I really invite you, in service of your own growth, Nico, I invite you to hold it like a hell yes and tell her, look, I'm in this for you no matter what. And I'm going to keep doing my work to get clean over here. And I'm going to give you the choice. We said hell yes to each other, but maybe it was too soon. Maybe I didn't serve you enough. Maybe I didn't test that enough. I think there's an opportunity here, but are you willing to say yes? Let's just check one more time. Because if so, then from here forward, I'm going to relate to both of us as fully in, right through to the very end of this. And if not, no harm, no foul, off we go. That's powerful modeling of commitment, and that is what will really make a difference for your clients. Amy, you are so sweet. I love that you said that. Thank you. It's easy to be the smartest guy in the room when the camera's facing you and no one can really say too much back at you. Just flag that one. And I still love that. If you were a hell yes to this person, if you took that question off the table and you were a hell yes to this person, then how would you be about the way she's showing up, right? If you had made yourself 100% committed to this person, then when they show up this way, how would you be? And then the last question I had for you, Nico, is you said, if I would deal with this differently if I was working one-on-one because I've got a little more confidence. Well, great. How would you deal with this if this happened one-on-one? What would you do? And I'm kind of curious, is it just fear that has you not doing that same thing here in a group setting? And if it is just fear, great. Well, you can distinguish that and be like, oh, it's just fear. I'm going to act anyhow. I'm going to do that thing. It's totally all right to let fear stop us. It's very human. But as coaches, I believe at least, once I make that commitment to my client, part of what I'm doing is I'm promising them I'm not going to let fear get in the way of me serving you. So last thing I want to say is that this is advanced leadership that I'm talking about, like working with a group this way, creating and addressing these messes. Like, this is really the top 1% of the pyramid. Most people are not doing this. Most people operate over top of this stuff. Happens in almost every boardroom. Most people try to create rules and legislation and relate to agreements as a way of stopping this from showing up, rather than as a container in which this can show up and then the work can be done. And for those of you that are coming to the public intensive in April, this is a lot of what we're supporting the coaching team in taking on. And as you can imagine, that requires a great deal of work on their part. It really requires, it's a bit of a pressure cooker, and it requires confronting our edges and doing the stuff that's uncomfortable. So my invitation is, if like kind of just like a preview or almost something to look for, like notice how, if you do come to the intensive, notice how your leader, your team lead works in this way. Notice how they're able to work with the nuances, and notice how they don't shy away from making a mess. Because then you will get to see leadership being modeled, and notice your reaction when the messes do get created. Oh, they shouldn't have done that. They created a mess. Oh, wow. Maybe there's some work for me as a leader to see how that mess is actually going to enable some beauty to grow out of it. Oh, yeah. Let's have one more sip of cafe. Last thing I want to say, which I've said 3 times so far. Nico, I really acknowledge you. It is a challenging thing to come and open yourself up to feedback, especially in a forum of coaches where it can be a tendency to get dogpiled or coached when you haven't asked for it. And I just think the question you asked, your willingness to ask this provides so much richness for all of us. Myself, like in answering this, I'm seeing things for myself, places where I'm like, wow, I actually could clean up and tighten up my relationship with this client or with this group. And it's also just like, it's so beautiful when a coach is taking, it just really moves me. It really inspires me when a coach is taking a look on their side and really willing to look over here and really open, because in being that way and being open yourself, you are actually, you're being the clearing for your client to be open. And in showing up 100% committed to doing your work and to taking a look on your side and owning that, you're being the clearing for your client to then do that. Tanner, can I request your group in April? Alas, so Kendra and myself don't lead groups in the public intensives. We lead the coaching leads. So we lead the people that are leading the groups. But rest assured, you will have a awesome leader. That is my promise to you. You will get the best possible leader there. Secret, they're all best possible leaders. They're all awesome. Okay. Hope you guys have an awesome evening. See y'all tomorrow for tea time. Peace.